In today's show, could the Blazers really land OG Anunoby in a trade with the Raptors? And Portland begins its pre-draft workouts as we get a look at which prospects are coming into the Rose City to work out for the Trailblazers. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. So why don't you make this show your first listen every single day, coming at you every single weekday. Make it a part of your daily routine, make it your first listen, and then tell your friends to do the same. Fun show for you today. We got some rumors, real life rumors with legs. A rumor that's about OG Anunoby that's quite frankly been swirling around the Portland area market, but is now getting some juice from the national media, and we'll discuss it. Is OG Anunoby a real target? Plus. The Blazers today, Tuesday, May 31st. This is Tuesday, May 31st show coming at you a little later in the day, but this is Tuesday's show, and on Tuesday, the Blazers worked out their first set of draft prospects. Now, the Blazers have been in other places seeing draft prospects, but typically during draft season, they bring folks in, and we got our first batch of who came in. And let me give you a hint. One of them's Dyson Daniels, someone right in the Blazers range, someone we'll learn more about to close the show. But let's start with the rumors, because this one's juicy, fun, and I think to some extent real, or at least the conversations are real. First, let's start where credit is due. Danny Morang over at Jack Ramsey's podcast and YouTube channel has been floating the idea with some credibility, with some the sort of sourcing behind it, but certainly floating the idea that the Blazers could acquire or would be interested in acquiring OG Anunoby. And I haven't really talked much about OG on the show because I regard it as wishful thinking, as like a really, really good option, but relatively hard to pull off. And like full disclosure, I have told Danny as much, someone I communicate with relatively regularly. But Danny has been floating this idea. Listen to Jack Ramsey's, because you'll get it first. Is that the Blazers would use the 7th overall pick in the draft to acquire Raptors forward OG Anunoby, a really good two-way forward, the type of player that a lot of good teams want. And today in Bleacher Report, Jake Fisher, one of the sort of up-and-coming, really good newsbreakers in the game, wrote a story specifically about about interest in OG Anunoby from a variety of teams, including your Portland Trailblazers. You don't say. What I'm saying is it doesn't. I want to be clear. I don't think local reporting needs national media to back it up, to add validation to it. But when two people who are largely unconnected are saying the same thing, it naturally offers validation in either direction, from national to local, local to national. In this case, from local to national. And Jake Fisher, to be sure, is like someone who knows things, and his reporting suggests a couple things. One, there's real interest from the Blazers in pursuing OG Anunoby. Cool. It truly makes sense. And some type of deal would be that the Blazers would offer something like the 7th overall pick and Josh Hart in exchange for OG. And what the other thing it makes clear is that while there is a lot going on with this offer, the interest from Portland, right? Like it's very real. Fisher offers this, and I regard this as perhaps the most important part of the entire story. I'm going to read it verbatim from Jake Fisher's work on BleacherReport.com. Check it out. Two sources with knowledge of the dynamic told Bleacher Report that Anunoby has not directly expressed discontent with the Raptors. Perhaps the conversation around him has been driven more by external interest in acquiring the fifth-year forward's services. Ding, ding, freaking ding. To me, this is why Fisher is such a good reporter, because instead of carrying water for one particular set of sources, which is very common in the newsbreaker game, is that somebody tells you something, so you bring it to the table. This really is, I think, a telling and very solid piece of reporting. Folks say that the Portland Trailblazers have interest in OG Anunoby, but additional sources or perhaps the same sources, but multiple sources suggest that OG hasn't asked for a trade. And while there might be some discontent in maybe his role and Scotty Barnes taking a step forward, like OG Anunoby has not gone to Toronto and said, trade me. It's more like, it seems, at least according to Fisher, and I think this is kind of why my initial skepticism with the sort of trade talk was like, the Raptors don't want to get rid of him. And if they do, what's the asking price? Because maybe the conversation around Portland is after OG is just because, right, the Portland Trailblazers would love to acquire OG Anunoby because he's really good and fits what they want to do. And I think that's always this time of year. Why is this type of news out? And I applaud Fisher for putting that right on the table, because straight up, like, I think this is the snag here. OG Anunoby's 24 years old. At his peak, he's something like an first-team all-defense contributor who has a little bit of shot creation ability and some shooting ability. He's an ideal 3-and-D wing. He's under contract for 2 more seasons at a relatively reasonable price. This is what every good team wants. And if they were truly to put him on the market, yes, this would be someone that folks were after. And is Josh Hart and 7 the best offer they could get? I'll tell you what, Josh Hart and 7 isn't a awful trade for OG Anunoby. Like, I don't think it's like laughable, laugh off the phone type of thing. I think it's helpful. The Raptors could use some more rim pressure. A guy who gets downhill. That's Josh Hart. The Raptors could use 7 to get that shot creator they need. They need more shot creation in the half court. That's like their big weakness, right? They don't exactly have that. For their offensive prowess, it's a lot of jump shooting. And a lot of hope that Pascal Siakam can get all the way to the rack. Like that's kind of their hope. I would expect that there are better offers out there than Josh Hart and 7, just in terms of what the Raptors want. But even in this reporting from Jake Fisher Bleach Report, the other idea is like the Raptors potentially being interested in Rudy Gobert, but Rudy Gobert's massive salary, closing in on $40 million, makes acquiring OG, who makes under $18 million, or if you do it in next calendar year, $18.5 million, you're still going to need to add another player to him. And as the Raptors are already a team extremely light on depth, trading multiple parts for Rudy Gobert, does that really make them better? Plus, the Raptors love playing dudes who are 6'8" to 6'10" and are multi-position players. That is their whole model. They did not acquire a center on purpose. In fact, they cut Drew Eubanks because they didn't think they needed a center. I don't think there's pressure to balance the roster. I don't think there's pressure to like fix a roster crunch or fix like a roll. The Raptors will just roll out 5 dudes who are all the same size and not worry about their space for them. What the belief is here is that potentially OG is getting squeezed a little bit in opportunity. And maybe his combination of him getting squeezed a little bit in opportunity and the Raptors needing upgrades in shot creation and at the center spot, he could be the one to move, because if the Raptors are going to get better, OG is their tradable part. Scotty Barnes is rookie of the year, who's fantastic. Fred VanVleet just signed an extension. Pascal Siakam is like an anchor of that core team. OG is the one that would be traded. I think there is some smoke and some fire connected to it here with OG to Portland. I remain pretty skeptical of it getting done based on my sort of initial reaction to the trade and the reporting that perhaps the conversation around him has been driven more by external interest in acquiring the 5th year's forwards services. That external interest is coming from your Portland Trailblazers. Let's talk about why this is such a good fit, because I think OG Anunoby is quite frankly would be close to an ideal off season. Let's explore that a little bit and why I think so in the second segment. But first, I want to tell you about Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made easy. I use the Prize Picks app on my phone all the time. It's a fun way to kind of pick an entry and pick players based on their projections and win a little bit of money. You're just picking versus the projection. So points, rebounds, assists, over underlines set by Prize Picks. You pick your players, you pick what over underlines you want to place in your entries, and you go from there. You can win up to 10 times on any entry because you're picking between 2 and 5 players, but you can hedge your bets. So you only got to get 3 out of 4 or 2 out of 3 and still win some money. It's fun. You can go to prizepicks.com, or you can be like me and download the app. But right now, you can just get some free money. Go, and the NBA Finals start on Thursday night. Download the app, enter the promo code NBA, and on your first entry, choose Jason Tatum or Steph Curry. And when one of them scores 1 point, any player on your first entry scores 1 point, you get $50 free deposited in your account. So download the app, promo code NBA, get $50 free. It's super easy. That is Prize Picks daily fantasy made simple. All right. So we talked about OG Anunoby. Credit to Danny Morang and Jake Fisher for being on the news, for knowing that it was a possibility. My skepticism remains, but let's drop my skepticism for a little bit because I want to just talk about this in the abstract. This is nearly a perfect fit. OG Anunoby is young, continuing to improve. And while he's had some availability issues, he was hurt coming out of the draft, which is probably why he slid all the way where he did. Blazers could have drafted him. Let's not talk about that now. He had an ACL injury coming out of college. He's had various other injuries that have limited his availability, and availability is the number one ability, is being able to play, being able to get on the court. But 24 years old, under contract for at least the next 2 seasons at about about 17.3 and then $18.5 million. Player option in the 24-25 season for about $19 million. He will be that is just a straight up great deal for someone of his caliber. And what is his caliber, right? The box score stuff probably, for my money, doesn't necessarily do him justice. I think OG Anunoby has a little bit of shot creation ability that maybe he could lean more into if he had a different role. I think he has some real spot up shooting skills. He could be a really useful spot up shooter. And I think what really takes him over the top for me, and what makes this idea of OG to Portland so intriguing, do it. If it's on the table, do it, is that at his peak, he is a first team all defense level defender, a versatile defender who can guard 1 through 4 and even switch onto the non-Embiid, non-Jokic 5s because he's strong and he's got a really strong base. Great hands, great defensive instincts. You're not asking he's a good team defender and a good on ball defender. He plays well in both of those in both of those roles. He is in Toronto. They play a wildly aggressive defense where they trap and sprint and scramble and recover and X out and just pressure the ball, help behind the ball, help the helper, and keep on moving and use all of their length and all of their athleticism to be a wild defense. I don't think Chauncey Billups wants to do that. I don't think he wants to be as aggressive as Nick Nurse, but we saw the Blazers pressure the ball, particularly early in the year when they were healthy prior to January, get out and blitz pick and rolls as much as anyone in the league. Get out and chase ball handlers away from the rim as much as anyone in the league and try to scramble behind and recover. It didn't work out very well. They weren't very good at it, but I think that is what the Blazers want to do. You can plug OG Anunoby right in there. OG Anunoby, to be clear, if he was on the Blazers roster, would be the best forward Damian Lillard has played with since LaMarcus Aldridge left. That's a little bit damning of the forward core since LaMarcus Aldridge left, said by me, a big Al-Farouq Aminu appreciator, big Mo Harkless fan. But OG Anunoby is better than those dudes today and could be significantly better because he's entering his physical prime on a relatively cheap contract where you get him for 2 more years. This is the ideal trade. And let me say the name I've been not trying to say on recent podcasts. OG Anunoby is a better fit on the Portland Trail Blazers than Jerami Grant. He's a better, more enticing target than Jerami Grant for a variety of reasons. One, if we're talking 2K rating or whatever, overall basketball player, I think Jerami Grant's probably better than OG Anunoby. But that does not matter when you are building a basketball team. We are not building a 2K team. And if we were, I'd still pick OG because I think defense is underrated. Look, the contract status alone makes OG more inviting to a team that's trying to acquire him. Jerami Grant is ending the final year of his contract, and then he's reportedly wants a max extension that pays him something north of $25 million, average annual value of about $28 million a year. Goodness freaking gracious, that is a wild overpay for Jerami Grant. Or not. If he gets it, it's just what he gets. It becomes the price for Jerami Grant. But when you're choosing between trading for something that is akin to a similar package, and I think Fisher points out that the asking price for Jerami Grant, in the same story that I've been citing in the OG Anunoby reporting, is that the asking price for Jerami Grant is either 2 first-round picks or a first-round pick and a player on a rookie scale contract. And that has been consistently the asking price from the Pistons for Grant. I don't think the Blazers should trade 2 first-round picks for Jerami Grant. I don't think they should trade 1 first-round pick for Jerami Grant, probably, unless they have a surplus, which as they sit here today, they do not. Also, Grant is a guy who he wasn't always this way, but he's blossomed as he's kind of spread his wings a little bit and chose to go to Detroit, to someone who wants a bigger chunk of the offense run for him. And I think some of the reporting around OG is that he could use a bigger chunk of the offense run for him, would like a bigger chunk of the offense run for him or run through him a little bit with on-ball responsibilities in Toronto. But he in that situation, he's talking about being the third as opposed to the fourth option, not number one. I think he slides into a comfortable role player position much better than Jerami Grant. He's cheaper. He's a little bit younger. I think he's a way better defender, and I think the sort of individual offense skills that Jerami Grant kind of flashes, that OG could develop them. Do I think Grant is better than OG Anunoby? I absolutely do. Do I think OG Anunoby is a better fit for the Portland Trail Blazers? I absolutely do. Absolutely do. Couple that with reportedly the asking price, according to Jake Fisher, Bleacher Report, is a little bit lower for OG Anunoby. Everything about it makes that trade more appealing to me. I've been kind of out on the Jerami Grant trade. Like, you know, at some point, if the Blazers had 2 top 10 picks, maybe you could have convinced me just because, again, surplus of picks. But I'm kind of out on it in general. It does not appeal to me. He's not my buttercup, not my huckleberry, rather. But like OG, I legitimately think is very good and would be very, very helpful. My skepticism remains. My skepticism of it getting done remains, but if it's on the table, which is why I want to sort of talk through it in this second segment, the large if that's in the room, do it. It's nearly an ideal fit. And if you can swing some version of this that allows you to trade, Josh Hart and the 7th overall pick and keep some of the powder dry for also acquiring Jerami Grant, like a future first and the traded player exception that would allow you to absorb Grant and take his money in and worry about the extension later. I don't think you could do both, because I think if you make the trade for OG Anunoby, you probably use the assets that the Pistons would want to acquire Jerami Grant, just based on the reporting from Jake Fisher and kind of just the logic that is me, an obsessive NBA person. But if you could do both, that is something like an A+ offseason. Sure, the Blazers will be without depth, but they'll also have the best forward core they've ever had while Damian Lillard is on the team, and that includes when they had LaMarcus Aldridge, mostly because Nick Batum wasn't as good as he was during that era. But yes, do it. If you can acquire OG Anunoby for Josh Hart in the 7th pick, do it in a heartbeat. Do it in a heartbeat. Don't look back. Just do it. Just press the yes button. Go. Call it into the league office and go ahead and do it. Speaking of that 7th pick, Blazers got 3 picks in the upcoming NBA draft, and they held workouts for draft prospects is the word I'm looking for, today at their practice facility in Tualatin. Let's talk about who showed up and why that's important in the third segment to close the show. But first, let me tell you about rockauto.com. It's a family business system specializing in helping do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They are a company born online and born to help you fix your car on the cheap. Save time, save money, real money. 30, 50, 100% more than when you're going to save, or 100% less rather, if you go to a chain auto parts store or a car dealership. Those places, they can't carry enough parts, and they just can't give you a discount because that's not the way they are set up. Rock Auto is set up to help you and specializing in helping you, and been doing it for 2 decades. So go to rockauto.com, see all the parts available for your car or truck, and while you're there, write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. That way, they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Blazers have some draft workouts today. Who showed up? Let's talk about them. The big name that we'll spend some time with to close the show is Dyson Daniels. 19-year-old who played for the G League Ignite. International prospect from Australia who's joined the G League in order to become a top 10 pick in the draft. But some others too. Julian Champagny, a 6'8 wing from St. John's. Darius Days, a 6'7 forward from Louisiana State. Muhammad Gay, a 6'11 big man from Washington State. Fats Russell, a 5'11 guard from Maryland, who spent the first 4 years of his career at Rhode Island. And Dallas Walton, 7-footer from Wake Forest. Let's do this quickly. I am bringing on draft experts later this week. The next 2 shows are going to have folks from the Locked On Podcast Network who are legitimately do this for their job. But Julian Champagny is like a dude who can shoot it, who can rebound a little, and he's 6'8". Like, he is an NBA player to me. If he's available in the second round, I would be very much into the Blazers taking a long look at him. His brother went to Pitt. I watched his brother play a bunch. Justin Champagnie, who's now in the Raptors organization. I think he's an NBA player too. Like, I think he has skills, and Julian Champagnie's a little bigger. So yes. The St. John's product I'm all in on. Darius Days, friend of mine told me that he thinks Days is probably an NBA forward at 6'7". The type of athlete that is coveted by NBA teams, 6'7", 245, like just a big body that can, that is what teams want. They want people of that frame and ilk. But the big name that was there, and the name that that highlighted the way the Blazers do this is that they announce, hey, tomorrow we're going to have draft workouts, and we will release the prospects just before the workouts start. And then you show up at the practice facility, and then the team releases who's there. I don't have no idea why they need to be so secretive, but they choose to be so secretive, and that is their right, so whatever. But when the list comes out, it's like, Dyson Daniels, huh? Oh, Daniels is clearly the premier guy in this group. I would say these are second rounders and dudes who are going to go undrafted. Sometimes draft workouts, because of the nature of how draft scouting works, sometimes you just do draft workouts as a favor. You say, yeah, hey, your agent we're trying to do him a solid. We'll get you in the gym, take a look at you, take a real serious look at you. But you're here because we're doing, Wasserman Group a favor or whatever it is. Dyson Daniels is not necessarily that. He is someone who is projected to go right in that middle lottery. I've seen him as high as 5 and as low as 13 in the mock drafts I was surveying prior to doing this. And he measured at 6'7.5" with a 6'10.5" wingspan at the combine. So 6'7" in shoes with almost a 6'11" wingspan. He's a point guard. He's skinnier and he's a guard type, maybe a 1-2. But he's got real size. His issue is that he's not much of a shooter, but he can rebound, he can dribble, he can make plays off the bounce, and he can pass, and he has some real the thing that really makes him stand out is several scouting reports I've read consider him one of the best defensive players in this draft, maybe the best guard defender in this draft. There's real value in someone his size with playmaking and ball handling skills who can really get after it on defense. Think of a more athletic Kyle Anderson. More athletic Kyle Anderson is a really freaking good player. Kyle Anderson is a top 8 contributor on every team in the NBA. If he wasn't incredibly and comically slow, he would be a totally different player. Even Anderson, who is slow, has at times been a very good defensive player in the league because of his size and his instincts. He's also a really good passer and with really good feel. Daniels is someone who maybe projects to be just a juiced up version of that, and he just turned 19, so it could be a lot better. In the G League night, he averaged 11.6 points, 6.7 rebounds, and 4.8 assists. The big thing you're going to see, that was 29 games across a couple G League events, but the thing you see from everyone, I've read it in 6 different scouting reports, the final 9 games of his G League career, he shot 45% from 3. Okay. I'd say that is true, but not particularly meaningful. He also, at the NBA Combine, did a solo workout, which means he was brave enough to go ahead and say, okay, executives from all 30 teams are here. I'm going to show you that I'm in good enough shape to work out by myself and not afraid to have a terrible shooting day and really hurt my draft stock. A lot of guys don't do that type of stuff, and Daniels was brave enough to go ahead and put together a workout, and not just not a big old group workout. There's a reason his name is climbing up draft boards. I think the simple question that you're asking, if Daniels is available at 7, do you take him? For me, he's not my number one choice because I think he projects as someone who needs the ball in his hands, and he's probably a guard. But I think he is good enough and intriguing enough that he should be on the Blazers list. My personal preferences should not really color your belief in what the Blazers should do. I think Daniels is good enough to be drafted at 7. I think he's talented enough to go ahead of that. And I think the shooting concerns, he shot 30% from 3 in the G League before on the year. So 45% of the last 9 games, you can do the math to figure out how poorly he shot in those first 20. I think the shooting is a concern, but I think the frame and the skills, like I'm a guy who just like skill level, if high skill level and size at that age, you're not going to get smaller. And if you can add shooting, the easiest skill to improve, you've got a really, really impressive like starting point. If a guy like Dyson Daniels, he was the name that jumped off the page. I think Justin Champagny, and according to a draft friend of mine, Darius Days definitely could be second round targets. We're going to talk about the Blazers. They have 2 second round picks, 36 and 56, or 36 and 57 rather. So we'll get there talking about the Blazers second rounders, but I think both of those are on the board. Dallas Walton I saw play a couple times at Wake. He's the third best player on the team. I think the other two guys, Jake LaRavia and Alondas Williams, I think are NBA players. I'm not sure Walton is. Fats Russell, just straight up, I'm unfamiliar with him, learned about him while prepping for this podcast. Same thing with Mohamed Gay, a skinny 6'11" big man from Washington State who was productive on a not particularly good Pac-12 team. Dyson Daniels is intriguing. The Blazers bringing players in who are in their draft range is not an indication that they will be using the pick. It's an indication that they're doing their due diligence. You prepare for all the outcomes. You don't say, we want to trade the pick, so we're not going to work anyone out who's in the 7 range. You prepare for all the outcomes. Day one of the Blazers bringing in prospects lets you prepare for the outcomes because you want to know the value of the pick. That's the thing Joe Cronin said, the value of the pick. That means if someone wows you, if Dyson Daniels works out today and you're like, holy cow, you watch his tape, holy cow, he's a top 3 pick. We can't, if he's hit 7, we have to take him, have to take him. Then it changes what the value of the pick is. You do your due diligence, you approach this season responsibly, and then you let this sort of your process color what's next. Would I take OG Anunoby over Dyson Daniels? Yeah, on the team next year, absolutely, absolutely. Doesn't mean that long-term Daniels or anyone else taking at 7 won't be better than OG. It just means the Blazers' stated goal to be competitive next season. Stated goal likely means veterans, and if that veteran is a 24-year-old really versatile defender who can shoot it under contract for 2 more seasons, oh my God, pull the trigger, just do it, just do it. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Tomorrow's show, Rafael Barlow, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board, a podcast host on this network, on the Locked On Network, the founder of NBA Draft Junkies, and a professional basketball scout who does this for a living, is going to join the show. Make sure you come back for that one. We'll talk all about what the Blazers can do and at all of their picks and what he's seen from risers and fallers during draft season. So come back for that one. Come back for more. 5 days a week, available wherever you get podcasts. Make it your first listen every day. Tell your friends to do the same. Appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.